Welcome to today's episode of the AI Trailblazer Podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest. He is none other than Yousef, the CPO and co-founder at Solitude AI. So, Yousef, it's a pleasure to have you here with us on the show today. Let's start off a bit with yourself. What is your background and what led you to start Solitude AI?
Hey Bruce, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the invite. So, to start off with my background, I've been a product manager since initially the very start of my career. I initially started working in the retail consumer goods space. So, I had the privilege of working in an emerging market at a time when they were converting business models from the brick and mortar consumer goods retailing model to the e-commerce model. So, I had a lot of hands-on experience and actually developing an e-commerce platform, defining customer profiles, understanding the best ways to actually deliver or enable distribution for different customers in different geographic regions for different demographics as well. After a while working in that space, I started to transition towards deep tech since I had a passion for actually building and designing digital products. Following that, moved into the telecommunication space where I started working for a deep tech company in the UK where they developed proprietary networking technology essentially to reduce the cost to serve to end consumers or to end clients actually connecting to different types of internet providers. But yeah, that's my background as a product manager. And as for my company, it's actually called Solitude AI, and we are a distribution platform for agents. What does that mean? It means we're a multi-sided platform that connects to both sellers and buyers. Buyers in our case are enterprises that need to automate hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of back office work for workflows, including accounts payable, accounts receivable. And we want to provide an experience that makes agents very easy to discover, implement, and do so in the most cost effective fashion. And as for sellers, what I'm referring to are automation agencies. So, on average, an automation agency has a hard time finding clients and being able to scale a productionized solution. So, we provide them with the infrastructure to be able to do so, and we make it as cost effective to scale and find clientele for them.
Got it. Then can you share more about what kind of specific problem does Solitude AI solve? And then go into some more examples of how exactly does it work in solving that problem.
All right. So, in terms of the problem we're trying to solve, when we were first developing the business model for our company, we identified an opportunity in the market because we realized that the majority of automation work is carried out using a somewhat redundant business model. So, on average, a consultancy or an automation agency, they'll go through a consultation period, POC build out period, and then and only then will they onboard a client and actually accept payment for whatever solution they've built out, as well as maintenance fees on top of that. So, a prepayment, consultation payment, a build out payment, and maintenance payment. That's four separate payments that any enterprise typically has to pay out in order for by automation. It can mean any type of workflow, mainly to do with manual data entry, let's say. So that's the main use case that's targeted these days for automation. Any workflow with a very high volume of documentation or just very rote, consistent steps that get executed that can be automated. The technology that was typically used for this was called RPA or IDP, which both stand for robotic process automation and intelligent document processing. Both are two separate types of technologies that essentially enable firms to automate different workflows. But since the advent and since the adoption of generative AI, my co-founder and I realized there was a much more cost-effective and quicker way to actually not only deploy automation solutions using agents, but also to ideate and to give a much more customized solution in much less time, essentially. So once we realized we could deliver the same value, if not better value, for a lot less money, we started exploring the problem even further. We talked to a lot of different companies in different verticals, which includes media, telecommunications, commodity trading, logistics, and as you well know, the best way to approach building a company or or developing a value proposition is actually identifying a beachhead, so identifying a single vertical, a single problem to attack in that vertical, and just expanding from there. That increases the likelihood of your end customer actually getting the value that you want to build out for them. So after a while, we settled on logistics, so freight providers, 3PLs, and we've built for the time being the buyer side aspect of our platform, so the enterprise, the consumer facing side of it. We've developed these dashboards that we like to call workspaces. You essentially, as a business, so as a logistics provider, you come on, you log on, you get access to a dashboard, you connect two tools, those tools being your email and your CRM provider. So by CRM provider, I mean HubSpot or Microsoft Dynamics, somewhere where you just keep your data. Once you connect your tools, there's essentially a process where you click on three buttons in a consecutive order through the workflow, and yeah, you just automate data entry for invoices. They come in, email gets scraped, invoice processing gets or the invoice analysis gets presented to you. You verify the information, and there's obviously a mechanism where we have human in the loop approvals. So until you validate that step, the data doesn't get pushed into your CRM. And the goal of this being, of course, to just save accounts payables teams a lot of their time instead of doing the work manually.
Yeah, got it. So, I mean, it essentially helps these freight providers and 3PLs to really save time and be more efficient in their processes by automating a lot of not just data entry, but also other parts of the processes that make up this. So, now let's talk a bit about your role as the co founder and CPO. What are your daily responsibilities, and then how does that fit into the bigger picture at Solitude AI?
So, as the chief product officer, I mean, anyone who's built a company knows that the early days of a company roles are fairly abstract. Everyone's just doing as much as they can to get things over the line. But as my role got more defined, I was responsible for essentially product management and UX and UI design. On the UX and UI design, what that means is I identified and actually contacted the first users for our platform. So I iterated and ideated on the actual design frames. So I built the low fidelity, the mid fidelity, the high fidelity prototypes, put them in front of customers, got as many iterations as I could for the buyer side and the seller side experience before we actually started building a POC. And yeah, I validated pain points. I talked to customers as much as I could. I basically made sure that before we started engineering or actually putting any any items on the backlog, that we validated everything as far as we could using the best practices in the industry without actually expending any resources. And on the product management front, my responsibilities include building out the roadmap, prioritizing items that are actually going to be put into production and staging, obviously consistently talking to customers, making sure that product experience is always up to par, always of the highest standard. Yeah, so just in a nutshell, those are the two main things, aside from obviously helping out with different roles, helped out with sales, accounting, but that doesn't fall into my official purview.
Got it. Now let's talk a bit about your goals for Solitude AI. Within the next 6 to 12 months, where do you want the company to be at?
So within the next 6 months, within 12 months, we're aiming for an ARR of $2 million. Essentially, for the time being, a single contract or a single annual contract value for us equates to around $9,000. So that's around $750 per month. We want to target around 150 users by that point, and we're confident that we could we could scale it up to that because the friction of getting on board is very low. And as I said, when you're targeting a specific niche,
Just
when
for a
you
bit
identify,
more perspective, right? How far away is this goal for Solitude AI right now? Like, is it a 2x? Is it a 10x?
I would say for the time being, it's around the 50x because we have leads in our pipeline, and we have a lot of traction in terms of onboarding sellers, so automation agencies. But to reach our 12-month goal, it's still further away than we'd like it to be, but we think things are really going to ramp up. We've especially started really developing and pushing through our sales and marketing initiatives where we're increasing the scope of our brand. We're getting on newsletters. publishing articles, case studies. So we're doing all the right things to get there.
Got it. I mean, at the same time, it sounds like an ambitious goal, but also seems like you're really confident in reaching those goals. So, since you mentioned marketing, let's talk a bit about some of that. What has been the key drivers or the key channels that you rely on to drive new customer acquisition? And then what are the channels that has performed really well for Solitude AI and perhaps some that hasn't really performed as well as you expected?
All right. So since we're a multi-sided platform, we use different channels to target different profiles. So I'll talk about enterprises for now. The two main profiles we've identified and that we've used to actually target logistics and freight providers in the space are LinkedIn and, funnily enough, different type of logistics forums on Reddit, on different news sources that also create forums for people in the space to congregate and to share their thoughts. Freight waves, freight caviar. I mean, the theme is pretty homogenous here. But yeah, essentially the approach we've taken is in order to build out the trust signals for our branding, in order to be able to convince people that our solution is robust and that they can trust us with their data, um, they can trust us to actually execute on what we promise we can. We are developing case studies where we're conducting interviews. We're actually being interviewed for articles to get published on very credible and very notable news aggregators for people in the space, and with the goal being that we want to not necessarily just force our product down their throat, but to educate them more on how to adopt the technology within the vertical, because a lot of people in the space, they're obviously very hesitant. People have started dabbling with generative AI. On average, 8% of enterprises in the small to medium category, of course, are actually starting to experiment with it, but they're still hesitant. They still feel like it's not reliable, it's not robust, hallucinates too much. So we've put a lot of work and effort into making sure our product is extremely robust and that we can guarantee a certain efficacy of quality. And that's our goal. We don't oversell them, we don't cross sell them, we don't upsell them. Our goal is just to educate them as much as possible on what's currently possible in the space, on what we're doing for our customers, and what we intend to do with them. And through that genuine approach, we feel like that really resonates with with business leaders and executives in the space who just want to understand more and want an easy segue into being able to adopt the product as opposed to being forced to do so at a later date. And for our sellers, so for the automation agencies, the channels we've identified are X and different types of forums as well, where agent builders go and talk about what their tech stack looks like, how they're attempting to productionize a solution, if they have a profit model in place, which is where we contacted and got in touch with a lot of the people we have on our waitlist today. Yeah, we take a very similar approach there as well. We are just very honest about the trials and tribulations that we've gone through to get to this point, how we've actually how we've adopted our current approach to developing agents, how our customers interact with those agents, how we make those agents reliable and robust. So that genuine connection that you end up establishing, I think, goes a long way in building trust and just giving people the freedom to lower their guard and actually want to work with you on something and take a risk.
Yeah, makes sense. And then what would be some of the biggest challenges that you have encountered while trying to, overcome some of this when it comes to the market adoption as well as the education side of things?
I would say the biggest challenge, well, first of all, let me mention this. We have come to the conclusion that as a result of us building a multi-sided platform, so a marketplace, we're facing the chicken and the egg problem. If you're familiar with that expression, it essentially means you got to attract one side in order for the other side to come and start getting value out of the platform. So that's partially the reason why we focused our approach on targeting buyers first, so enterprises. We realized once we built a robust enough pipeline and once we attract enough people or enough buyers to the platform, sellers will be incentivized to actually trust our platform enough to build on top of it and to start actually building out and sharing automation solutions with said enterprises. But yeah, in terms of problems that we're trying to that we're trying to solve. The main hurdle now is just getting people to trust the technology we've built. That's why the education piece is so vital for us. That's why we're doing interviews, we're making case studies, we're trying to get our message across on the most trustworthy channels in the space because people are very hesitant to adopt the technology right now. So, regardless of how useful it is, regardless of what it's capable of, people are just hesitant. And I don't blame them, to be honest. There have been lots of cases of hallucinations actually, let's say, making workflows redundant or difficult to actually process. There have been cases where agents that are fully autonomous have deleted entire databases, right? There have been too many cases. The tech isn't robust enough yet, which is partially why we are also very interested, or we were very adamant on including a human in the loop element to our technology. So there's always someone present. There's always someone who has the final say over whether something gets pushed through or done as a result of the agent's outputs. But yeah, the main thing that we're trying to overcome now is just establishing our brand and educating users enough or educating customers enough to know that the technology is developing very quickly. It's trustworthy and it's worth taking a shot.
So how would you gauge that this effort by the company to, educate the users is successful? Are there any metrics that you track to ensure that the company is successful in reaching these goals?
Metrics to track. Well, usually I would say we'd want to target high net promoter score, which basically tells us how much a user or how much someone using the platform actually enjoys the experience to the point where they're willing to become an evangelist and share the product within their circles, within their professional circles, preferably. But yeah, our approach has been to develop a very product-led growth strategy. So we want the product and the usability of the product to be as enjoyable as possible. And we were actually heavily inspired by Clay. I don't know if you've heard of them, but
Yes.
they've been yeah, they've been a big help to us. They've been a big part of our marketing and sales initiatives. And
Are
for
they
anyone who
like a
doesn't know,
partner in your marketing?
not necessarily a partner, but we use them heavily. Like I don't know, in case your viewers haven't heard of them, they help you refine and validate leads
Yeah,
for your
it's like
sales.
spreadsheets on steroids.
Exactly, spreadsheets. That's a great way to put it. You can use like AI market sentiment analysis. You add in a prompt essentially, and the agent researches for whatever extra data points you would be interested in validating when it comes to sourcing your leads. But anyway, that's besides the point. You would think that for a product that helps you source leads, that might be associated with something boring or something that doesn't exactly inspire you to love the product, but that's very much not the case. Everyone on my team is just obsessed with Clay. So it's just as a point of reference, that's kind of what we want to go for as well with our product, even though it's a B2B product, even though it helps you for the time being automate invoice data entry. We want our end users to just really love the experience and actually share it and talk about it as a result of word of mouth. So that's our main metric. If we can get the product to a point where it's that useful and it's that liked, then we're going to start actually thinking about other growth metrics because for the time being we don't have the traction to actually create the relative metrics for growth hacking because we're just not at that stage.
I see. Then what sort of traction do you need to see in order to think that you're at that state?
Well, seeing as our goal is to reach between 100 and 150 customers within the next 12 months. Once we consistently start onboarding between 5 to 10 customers per month, then from that point, we're going to be at a stage where we think to ourselves, okay, we need to start devising ways where we can shorten the sales cycle, where we can increase the speed of onboarding, where we can enable incentives for referral schemes, right? Then all of that starts coming into play. But for the time being, the rate at which we're onboarding customers, it's not, I wouldn't call it slow, but like we're just really taking our time, as I said, because we want to get the product right.
Got it. Yeah, so I think at this point you've pointed out quite a couple of different challenges or issues in the business or things that you want to improve. Things like, the educational marketing and overcoming the users. I mean, helping to increase their trust in AI and your product. Then you also covered things like the sales cycle, shortening that, as well as speeding up the pace of onboarding. But let's say hypothetically, if you had like a magic wand to fix one thing in the business right now that is either slowing you down or holding back you from reaching your goals, what would that one thing be?
One thing that's holding me back from reaching my goals?
Yeah, one thing that you want to fix in the business right now with a magic wand.
One thing I'd want to fix right now with a magic wand. Honestly, it's a good question. I guess the ability to know the right person to hire at the right time. That's actually one of the biggest obstacles we've come across as well. Knowing, because everyone gives you different advice, every different renowned startup has hired a sales role or a marketing role at a different point in their development. Some adopted a philosophy that says you can only hire a sales lead, sales team once you develop a certain amount of traction. Others say that you have to hire them from the beginning to develop the culture of having the right sales philosophy and organization in place. So, yeah, if I could solve one problem, it would be to wave my wand and just have someone write out the exact guidelines for when is the right time to hire and who to hire, of course. But as we know, that's impossible. You just have to make an educated guess on on what the best approach is using the data you have and your instincts.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good answer. It's hard to figure out when to hire exactly because everyone gives different advice based on different contexts, different from the circumstances you face in the business. But we are
Yeah.
going into the last segment of our podcast here. What kind of trends or shifts are you seeing in your industry right now? And then how is that impacting the growth of Solitude AI?
Well, more holistically speaking, the trends in the industry for generative I would say are looking very healthy because, as you know, there's very fervent competition amongst model builders, open and closed source models. Open source models are being developed and published with longer context lengths, if not every other week, right? So they become more and more powerful, more and more robust. In our case, we use VLLMs and the model's capabilities to actually scan the relevant data and upload an increased context length. So meaning like the number of pages you can upload to analysis. Like a new model comes out every 3 to 4 weeks. That's like, let's say 20 to 30% better than the previous model I'm averaging here. But these are ridiculous rates of advancement, right? And with every model, our product gets more accurate and it brings down our compute costs. And it's just, I would say the trends are looking very positive, right? Hallucinations are going down, right? Frameworks are being put in place to actually reduce the error rate for what a lot of this tech can do. I think the trend here is that the tech is developing at a certain rate and people applying and actually using the tech at the same time enables builders to understand what fringes to build around. So how to make the technology more robust when it was first released. So when OpenAI beckoned the era of generative AI essentially to a point, in terms of the narrative. Yeah, people didn't really know what it would be used for. Then the first open source LLMs came out, and now we're 2 to 3 years in. We know what people want to use it for. We know what it can be developed for. So yeah, I think the 8% mark that I mentioned in terms of SMEs or enterprises experimenting with generative AI, that number is slowly increasing as well because the technology is becoming more robust. People are becoming more well versed in how to use it, how to apply it to their business, right? It's streamlining, I think. So I honestly think that this industry or this tech has a lot of potential and a lot of room to grow, and it's only going to get better to use from here.
Interesting. Yeah, they all seem to point in positive directions and positive tailwinds for your business. So that brings us to the conclusion of the podcast. Once again, Joseph, thank you for taking the time out to do this and for sharing these valuable insights with our audience. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Bruce. Anytime. I'll catch you next time.
Yeah, you're welcome. And let's say if the audience wants to find out about what you do or your company, what is the best way for them to do so?
You can just go to Solitude AI. All of our information's on there. Our emails are on there to reach out to us. Our LinkedIn's. We have a Medium blog if you want to read up on what we've done in the past. But yeah, just check out our site. Everything should be there.
Awesome. Again, thank you, Joseph. That's about it.
Have a lovely day.